Hello Chassos, Jay from Pantheon Studios here. We have the Munitorium Field Manual and the Balance Dataslate, and there are some pretty big implications for Tau and how they're going to play and what our lists are going to look like and everything else. So I wanted to make a video, not to hash over every little change that's gone on, all the points and whatever else. My channel is specifically a competitive 40k channel, so I'm going to go over on more of the competitive side what this means for us, go through in a separate video the new secondaries and what they mean for us, and what we'll likely be taking and whatever else, and going through in this one what points changes and updates to other factions, updates to ours, likely means for the metagame. Now, all of this stuff, I don't have any solid hard evidence because nobody has played with this stuff in a GT or, you know, big tournament setting, but just some things that leap out to me and some assumptions that I am making based off what I understand about how we build lists and how we do whatever else. So yeah, strap in, let's get ready to do this. One quick thing before I start, I am the sponsor of this video, so if you're interested in knowing how you can support me in my studio, then there will be some information at the end. Big thank you to all of my patrons who I'll put on screen now. I couldn't be doing it without you. Really amazed at the first month that we've had after launching the Patreon. The Discord is active as hell with people talking about not only competitive 40k, but what they're painting, what they're doing, and actually a diverse amount of armies. It's not just Tau that's in there, which makes me really happy. It's probably the best case scenario for me as somebody who's, you know, getting this stuff off the ground. So if you're interested in knowing how you can support me, improve the quality of all of my videos and everything else, and join these wonderful people on screen, then stick around at the end of the video. Okay, so let's get down.
Let's get down to business.
I think I've got to insert a Mulan thing just there. So let's just get an overview of what changed. So all of the commanders went up 10 points. The ethereal went up 10 points, which, I mean, I know that I was putting in a good word for the ethereal, but this one surprised me. I don't think ethereals are that oppressive that they needed to go up 10 points. And one of the things from this is that on Var and on She, both had their stock go way up. Because for the difference of 10 or 15 points and not having to spend a CP, and I mean, usually you'd end up putting a hover drone on him, so really, it's 5 points difference for Onvar. You get 100 points for 3 models. He's got a bunch of extra rules on him. He innately has the Humble Stave. Same with on She, they know 3, cast 2, and just really good. I mean, they know 1 additional power over the ethereal, which gives you a lot of flexibility in, all right, I'm going to have the Feel No Pain, I'm going to have the CP regen, and maybe I'll also take the shoot while still performing an action, which bumps up the value of things like banners or aerospace targeting relays, or, you know, a lot of the action-based things that we can do to score. This one just, the ethereal's dead now. Unfortunately, the ethereal's dead. If you see them, it's probably going to be on Var or on She. If you've got the points lying around for it, sure, but this feels really bad. Kroot went up to 7 points per model. Obviously, we don't need to take troops anymore, so this entire section is maybe dead. I think there will be some play with breaches in Devilfish, supplementing a style of list that plays the mission a lot more, or maybe goes back to a little bit more of an aggressive breacher style game. I don't think it will. I think the Kroot are just kind of off the table now. Battle suits and bodyguards went up 5 points per model. Just a quick note for anybody that's using Battle Scribe. If you're looking at it now without the update and you're saying, well, it's already 45 points per model, just bear in mind, go in there, the burst cannons are automatically put on there by Battle Scribe, but as far as the book is concerned, that is not a base inclusion on the model. That is not a part of its base thing. So they are 40 points now with a 5-point burst cannon on there, if that's confusing anybody. They do the same thing for the commanders. I think they put, yeah, it's a 10-point burst cannon, so it makes it look like the points didn't go up at all. And then the rest of our army didn't get touched. Which, I mean, like, I'll be honest, seeing this stuff, I know reflexively what they're doing. Because they've opened up the ability for us to have 2 commanders in any detachment by just paying a CP or getting it for free if you're Farsight, which actually does drive up Farsight's value quite a bit in that you don't need to spend that CP and you can spend it on other stuff. And with AOC going away, it may actually bring us to a point where we can still be very aggressive against a lot of these meta armies, and Farsight, bumping out and getting in people's faces and getting the counters Marker Light and all the other stuff that goes with it could be really, really good. So there are a few implications to take from this, and that is that first and foremost, I don't think we're going to see a ton of Kroot anymore in massive lists. We may have 1 or 2 units maybe just as objective holders or action monkeys or whatever else, but to be honest, troops have never been our strong suit. They have been attacks that we have just done the best that we could. Kroot were the best for that because they were so damn cheap. And then we just fill our lists with elites and fast attack and whatever else. I actually have been considering a lot more, not just my beloved Kroot Hounds. Everybody who watches my channel knows how I feel about my Kroot Hounds. I'm so glad that they didn't change. My boys are just... But also Vespid, in my eyes, have gone up. They are 60 points for a 5-man unit. They have a 4-up save naturally. They're infantry, so they can go to 3-up in light cover, which means that they already have a better save profile than Kroot. Yes, they have less wounds, but their guns are marine killers. 2 shots of strength 5, AP 3, damage 2 is absolutely nothing to sneeze at. And even if you don't have rerolls for them, then that's still fine. Riptides didn't get touched. I think that, and actually, let me go into it before I, you can tell that I'm a little bit excited by this, a little bit disappointed in some areas. There's a lot to process, but this stuff is why I love this game. I love being intellectually engaged. If I learn everything too fast and there's nothing else for me, I lose interest very, very quickly. So one of the things that is one of the biggest shakeups to how we're going to build lists and whatever else is the aircraft rules. Now, our bombers caught 2 nerfs here. The first is they must start in strategic reserve. Now, I will say that our bombers aren't as bad off as other people's are, because in a lot of instances we were using Exemplar of the Kaoyun to pull them off the board anyway. Doing this for free just means that we have that deep strike threat that people have to worry about. The big thing, if an aircraft unit has a rule that is triggered after it is moved, that rule only takes effect if that model ends its move on the battlefield. For example, this means an aircraft unit cannot drop bombs on a unit in a turn in which it ends a move off the battlefield. Which means that there is no more flying your bombers over the top of somebody, flying them off the board into strat reserve, getting ready for the next turn, and bombing them as you go. Now, this has a few implications in that flying off the board was a lot of the time the best thing to do when your opponent, like GSE, you just cannot fly in range of them, so you couldn't bomb them while they had blips or whatever else. Obviously, once they come up out of the ground, then that's fine. But what a lot of people would do would screen well, and I actually did this in the Town Mirror so many times, putting units around where they physically could not fit their base and not be in engagement range of my units, so that there was nowhere for them to fly. So if they wanted to fly off the board, they could. They do their bombing there, but that meant there was no shooting into my backline. And people do this very, very, very well, at least at the top end. So this means that because if you fly them over and they don't bomb, you just wasted a turn with those bombers. And yes, we can hold them to the end of it, and this is why we're not so bad off, because our bombers have great shooting, and they benefit from things like Kaoyun. So if they come on, turn 2, and the enemy is exploding out on the board, they don't want to be sitting on their backfield, screening out everything else, and then we fly over and we hit them, we can bomb them, we can shoot them, we benefit from Kaoyun, because when that aircraft moves, if it comes down turn 2 and we protect it, say, at the back of the board, which I've done multiple times to make sure they don't just get shot off, and then they fly and bomb next turn, we're still getting, 3 turns worth of stuff. I mean, usually my bombers would only get 1 turn anyway. The difference would be that it would be turn 1 when I was picking up something that the enemy hadn't gotten value out of yet, and that was kind of the big draw for it. So even though they didn't get a points increase, I'm gonna go out on a limb and say that the bombers are dead. They're dead in the water. It hurts me. I love the Sunshark bombers so much, not just for the rules and how powerful they were, but just, I love the models. I love having those aircraft. I love having a combined arms army that has a bunch of different stuff, and it's not just, you know, Riptides and Crisis Suits or whatever else. Now, I want to go through at this point, for anybody who is newer to understanding the balance data slates and whatever else, this actually came up in my Discord. Great reason to jump over to the Patreon, get involved and get into the Discord, because you basically have access to ask any of the questions that you want to ask, and, you know, have access to a community of some pretty competitive people that are doing some great stuff. The way to read the Balance Data Slate is that if you can see a rule, it still is in effect. So even if you were to go back to when, say, the indirect and the bodyguard ability changed, each document that goes out, if it's still got these in here, then the rule is still in effect. So when you go through the Balance Data Slate, what you're looking for, even if these changes happened months ago, as long as we see it each time a Balance Data Slate comes out, that is G-Dub saying, hey, these rules are still in effect. This is what you play with. If it's not there, then you don't have to play with it. The big thing here, indirect fire weapons, you'll notice that there is no mention of Astra Militarum having an exemption. That is one of the ways to read this stuff. Bodyguard abilities, obviously this was kind of aimed at us and also at Tyranids, who are abusing the Tyrant Guard quite a bit. So indirect fire weapons are still bad. Bodyguard abilities are still just look out, sir, not the actual bodyguard. And then you'll notice down for Tau at the bottom, it's all of the things that changed before. So really in this Balanced Data Slate, we had nothing happen to us, which is great. The points, obviously, we caught some nerfs, and that's got some implications. But what I'll go through now is where I see our list building going. And unfortunately, my girl, my favorite, my big Shasso, I think Shadowsun's dead as well. Unfortunately, because, and this is a really, really big thing. When we look at how we're going to be building lists, everybody must take an Arcs of Omen detachment. The other detachments that you can take are Battle Brothers of either a patrol, it's a limited pool of like a patrol, a super heavy auxiliary, and something else. But the Supreme Command detachment is gone. Which, in my previous video, when I was getting excited about having an extra commander, that was in the vacuum of, okay, well, I've still got Shadowsun who can go into her own thing, and then I can have two other commanders. Unfortunately, Shadowsun does not compete with some of these other commanders. Because even though they will end up more expensive, we can kit them to the eyeballs with really, really good weapons, with really good prototype systems, with relics, with warlord traits that aren't Exemplar of the Kaoyun. And now, without the bombers, Exemplar of the Kaoyun is still going to be good, and it will still see play, but it won't be the auto take that it was. Because if we've got, say we transition to like a Triptide list, which may be where this is going, because also the Crisis Suit's getting nerfed, like 45 points a model, they are expensive now. They are really expensive. And so if we're not stacking a bunch of Crisis Suits, she loses value because Chapter Master goes away. If we're just using commanders to fill in certain gaps or use them as platforms of devastation, basically, because they're just so killy, Shadowsun doesn't compete. She really doesn't. And for 150 points base, she starts to compete with, like, say, a Crisis Battlesuit commander. If we've got him kitted out conservatively, he will come in, or I don't mean conservatively as in bad, but just like point efficient weapons. So we've got him with like a cyclic, we've got him with a plasma rifle, we've got him with a missile pod, and we've got him with like, let's say a flamer, and he's got a thermoneutronic or something. He's going to come out to about the same number of points as Shadowsun. He gives reroll 1s in an aura. He gives fallback and shoot, as well as ignore any or all hit modifiers. So even if we do splash in a couple of Crisis Suits or a couple of bodyguards or whatever, you're able to bump them up. But Shadowsun's big value was giving full Chapter Master rerolls, yes, to a character, which can be nice, but it was to a bigger unit of Crisis Suits where you're getting massive value out of those rerolls, which we won't have anymore. And I think that the stock of a mechanized tower list actually goes up quite a lot. And we're transitioning, and I loved this take from Richard Siegler from Art of War, where he was talking about Tau is going, and I agree 100%, I was having this thought even before he said it, that we are going from a kill all of your stuff before you can kill us, and I'll win because you're not on the board anymore, and if I can't do that, then I just lose, to a list which is going to have to play the mission. A list that is going to have to interact with our opponents and play an entire game. We aren't just going to remove them from the board immediately. Now, that's not to say that you won't be able to alpha strike the shit out of people, because, you know, good Tau players will always find those means. But if you've got, you know, Riptides, I think Riptide's value has gone up massively because they didn't change. 250 points throwing an ion accelerator onto this unit. They are really, really good. They're really tanky with the 2-up, 4-up, the ability to give themselves a 5-up, feel no pain. Shielded missile drones are basically just shield drones, but a little bit better because they got their own missiles and you can throw out some fire from them. They can be a very hard unit to shift. And you've also got the ability with the Nova Reactor to have them move in your charge phase and basically fire and fade for free. With 3 units not having to spend CP or only do it with 1. Having these all over the board, you can go really aggressive, you can go really conservative, and if anybody's interested, I will actually set up a mock battle in my studio and I will show you all the different tricks that you can get away with these Riptides, because there's a lot that you can do to steal the board or kill people or get angles and then get yourself to safety and whatever else. I think their stock has gone up quite a lot. I'm interested to see where we end up going. I've got to tool around with my list quite a bit, but yeah, the other thing that we've got to look at is the secondaries and the missions and all that sort of stuff. I won't go into it in this video because that will be a long conversation and I want to keep these videos relatively digestible. But my big takeaways from this is that Shadowsun is a lot more niche now and may be dead now that she's directly competing with the 3 other commanders. Ethereals, I don't think I'm going to be taking one. I think they're dead. I think the Carnivores are a little more expensive and we don't have to take troops anymore. I think the Crisis Suits are going to be much less prevalent. And our Sun Sharks, unfortunately, are dead, even though 165 for that unit is actually really, really good. I think that they will have play, but I don't think that they are the auto-include that facilitates an Alpha Strike list. Or even a Beta Strike list, depending on how well you play. Some disappointments for me. The Ghost Keel should not be as expensive as it is, with no changes to its rules. That is incredibly disappointing. The Razor Shark is now perma-dead. Like, it couldn't compete with the Sun Shark before, and now 10 points less is not enough for the things that we've had. I really, really would have liked maybe some adjustment to how expensive our troops and our Devilfish are, because at the end of the day, we do not take breaches or strikes without a Devilfish. They don't have the movement, they don't have the tricks that some other things have. You need the Devilfish to facilitate them, and we just don't have it. Them jumping out in front of the Crisis Suits and everything else, they've taken what is a 50% win rate army, and I think, and I'm happy to eat my words on this, I think that we are going to see more of a gap between the top players and the bottom players, because all of these changes are going to make it so that the top players are still going to do what they do. Anyone who's really proficient with the army and understands how to play and score and win and exploit people's mistakes and all that sort of stuff, you're still going to do well. Your list will change, but you'll still do well. The lower end, however, you're paying more points for less value, and the lower end was already what was dragging down Tau's win rate quite heavily. And I mean, obviously that goes for the other side. The people that were exceptional with the Tau army were dragging up the win rate quite a bit, because this army can be oppressive when somebody plays it well and exploits somebody's mistakes. Like, being able to do all of your damage from range is really, really, really oppressive. If you've ever been on the receiving end of it, it's it's like this Family Guy meme.
Get ready to die. Oh. Huh. Wonder what this feels like. Ow! That hurts. My God, is that what I've been doing to people? I belong here.
So, yeah. A little bit disappointing that a 50% win rate army copped a whole bunch of nerfs in a whole heap of different ways, and one of the units that was propping us up got completely obliterated. But I'm excited to see how the metagame shifts out. I'm excited to see what happens. I'm glad that the Balance Dataslate basically didn't touch us outside of the aircraft rule. I would like to see G-Dub revisit indirect fire because AFPs almost have no place at the moment. But then again, this is a very hard one to solve. And the last thing I want is for us to go back to where we were just AFPing and smart missile systeming the shit out of everybody and nobody could play the game even from behind a wall and in a building. That would be just the biggest misstep that you could possibly have. One other thing I forgot to mention, a disappointment of mine, is that our Lords of War, when everybody else is getting these glow-ups, Storm Surge is at 400 points. That is way too expensive. Especially because you're going to take the Pulse Blast Cannon, which adds an extra 10. And just, like, this nerf was pretty heavy-handed. You're not seeing Storm Surges anymore. They are way too expensive. This could come down to, like, 350 and be in a really good place. There was 300 before, which was way too cheap, but 350 would put them in about a good spot. And also just what they've done with our Forge World stuff. I mean, I'll head down to it, but like there were no changes. Literally no changes. Everything is the same amount of points, and we don't really see Forge World stuff. I don't know why we aren't getting any changes to this whatsoever. It's, to be honest, it feels kind of like GW has a real love-hate relationship with their game, with their Forge World products, and just they're not in a position where they want to make them really competitive or make them shine. This is my initial take. I'm excited for the way that Arcs of Omen is building lists. To be honest, I will probably be playing my major tournaments on either Leagues of Catan or Grey Knights. But yeah, stick around for the secondary video, and yeah, let me know what you think. Chuck a comment down, do all the internet things. If you're interested in supporting me and the studio with everything that we do and getting access to the Discord and the early content, because all of my patrons get these videos 24 hours early, as well as being able to ask me questions, be involved in that community, be a part of this as it's growing and blowing up, head to the link in the description, over to my Patreon, and look at ways that you can support me further. We will be having the winners of the giveaways unveiled soon, which is obviously the other side of it. My patrons get access to a $50 giveaway every single month for Aussie Wargame, which is going to be really, really great. And at the moment, there's, we're still growing, so the numbers aren't really that saturated. You got a pretty good chance of getting that month in, month out. So, yeah, hopefully see you soon, and I'll see you for the next video.